There was once an old farmer who spent his entire savings on apple saplings when he was already 73 years old. His neighbors thought he'd lost his mind. "You'll never live to see those trees bear fruit," they said. The old man just smiled and kept planting. When they pressed him about it, he said something that changed my whole understanding of belief. "I'm not planting these trees for the fruit I'll eat. I'm planting them because I believe so completely in tomorrow that I can already taste the apples my grandchildren will pick." That farmer understood something most people never learn. Real belief isn't about what you can see, it's about what you know is coming. You know what I've learned about belief after all these years? Most people think they believe in their dreams, but what they really have is hope dressed up in Sunday clothes. There's a world of difference between hoping something might work out and knowing down in your bones that it absolutely will. Hope is wishy-washy. Hope says maybe. Hope keeps you up at night wondering what if. But belief is rock solid. Belief says when, not if. Belief lets you sleep peacefully because the outcome isn't in question. Let me tell you about a conversation that changed my life. I was working on a farm, making pennies, dreaming small dreams that felt too big even for me. Then I met this mentor, this man who saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. He didn't just encourage me, he believed in me with such conviction that I started to believe it too. But here's the thing, he didn't believe in some fantasy version of me. He believed in the real me, the me that was buried under years of small thinking and limited expectations. That's when I learned the first law of unshakable belief. Authentic belief isn't built on delusion, it's built on seeing reality clearly and choosing to work with it rather than against it. Most people's beliefs are like sand castles built too close to the ocean. They look impressive for a while, but the first wave of criticism, the first setback, the first no they hear, and crash, there goes another dream. Why? Because they built their belief on shifting ground. They based their certainty on external circumstances, other people's opinions, or worse yet, on how they felt on any given Tuesday. But here's what separates the successful from the struggling. Successful people build their beliefs on bedrock, not sand. There are 3 levels of belief, and understanding this will change everything for you. The first level is intellectual belief. That's when your head says, yes, this makes sense. Most people stop there. They read a book, attend a seminar, get intellectually convinced and wonder why nothing changes. That's because intellectual belief is just the foundation, not the whole building. The second level is emotional belief. Emotional belief. That's when your heart gets involved. Now you're not just thinking it, you're feeling it. You get excited, motivated, fired up. That's better, but it's still not enough. The third level, and this is where the magic happens, is cellular belief. That's when every fiber of your being knows something is true. It's in your DNA. It's in your walk, your talk, your posture. It's so much a part of you that questioning it would be like questioning whether you need to breathe. Here's what separates the people who make it from those who don't. They develop cellular belief before they have any evidence that their belief is justified. I watched a woman start her first business at 65 years old. Everyone told her she was crazy. You're too old, they said. You don't have experience, they said. What if you fail, they asked. But this woman had cellular belief. She didn't just think she could succeed, she knew it. She didn't hope her business would work. She was certain it would. And you know what happened? The world had no choice but to notice. Customers found her. Opportunities opened up. Success seemed to chase her down the street. Why? Because when you believe at the cellular level, you emit a frequency that the universe can't ignore. The truth is, belief isn't about being unrealistic. In fact, it's the opposite. Belief is about being completely committed to reality. Not the reality of your current circumstances, but the reality of what's possible when you apply consistent effort over time. When you truly believe in something, you see obstacles differently. Instead of seeing reasons to quit, you see problems to solve. Instead of seeing closed doors, you see skills you need to develop. Instead of seeing failure, you see feedback. I want you to understand something about the compound effect of daily belief-building habits. Most people think belief is something that either happens to you or it doesn't. Like you're either born with it or you're not. That's nonsense. Belief is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. Every day you choose to act on your belief, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, you're making that belief stronger. Every time you choose to feed your certainty instead of your doubt, you're building something unshakable. But here's the flip side, and this is crucial. Weak belief produces weak results. When your belief is shaky, your actions are half-hearted. When your conviction wavers, your persistence falters. You can't give what you don't have. You can't inspire confidence if you don't possess it. You can't attract success if you don't believe you deserve it. But strong belief demands strong results. When you believe with every cell in your body, you can't help but act differently. You walk differently, you talk differently, you show up differently. And when you show up differently, the world responds differently. The old farmer I told you about, he lived to be 92. He ate apples from those trees for 19 years, and when he passed away, his grandchildren were still picking fruit from his belief. That's the power of unshakable belief. It outlasts you. It creates something bigger than your lifetime. It becomes a legacy that keeps producing long after you're gone. So here's my question for you. What are you planting today that you believe in so completely it doesn't matter whether you'll be around to see all the fruit? Because that's where unshakable belief begins, with the absolute certainty that what you're building today will stand the test of time. The foundation you lay now will determine whether your dreams crumble at the first sign of pressure or stand strong against every storm that comes your way. Now, once you've got that foundation of belief solid as bedrock, something interesting starts to happen. Something that most people never experience because they never get their belief strong enough to reach this level. You start to develop what I call magnetic presence, that quality that makes people lean in when you speak, that makes opportunities come looking for you instead of the other way around. Let me tell you about my own transformation. I grew up on a farm in Idaho, picking beans for nickels and dimes, thinking small thoughts because that's all I knew. I was shy, uncertain, convinced that success was something that happened to other people. People who were born different, people who had advantages I didn't have. But when my mentor started believing in me with such conviction, something shifted. Not overnight. This isn't one of those fairy tale stories. It took time. But slowly, his belief in me started to become my belief in me. Here's what happened next, and this is where it gets interesting. As my belief grew stronger, I noticed people responding to me differently. Before I even opened my mouth, before I said a single word, people could sense something had changed. They started asking me questions they'd never asked before. They started seeking my advice on things I'd never given advice on. They started treating me like someone who had answers, even when I wasn't sure I had any. That's when I learned one of the most powerful truths about success. People can feel your belief before you even speak. There's a science to presence that most people never understand. Every human being walks around with an invisible energy field, and that field broadcasts your internal state to everyone around you. When you're filled with doubt, people sense it. When you're pretending to be confident but feeling insecure inside, people pick up on that too. But when you have genuine, unshakable belief running through your system, that broadcasts too. And here's the beautiful thing. Authentic belief is magnetic. People are drawn to it like metal to a magnet because it's so rare in this world. You know what I've learned about confidence and belief? They're cousins, not twins. Confidence can be faked, at least for a while. You can put on a confident act, puff out your chest, speak louder than everyone else, and fool some people some of the time. But belief can't be faked because it comes from somewhere deeper. Confidence is often about convincing other people. Belief is about knowing something so completely that you don't need to convince anyone. When you have real belief, you don't have to work so hard at being confident because confidence becomes a natural byproduct of certainty. Here's something that will change how you see everything. The world is a mirror. It reflects back to you what you truly believe about yourself, not what you say you believe, not what you hope you believe, but what you actually believe down in your core. I watched an executive get promoted 3 times in 2 years. Not because he was the smartest person in the room, not because he had the most experience, but because he had what his colleagues called quiet certainty. He never had to demand respect because he carried himself like someone who already had it. He never had to fight for opportunities because he moved through the world like someone who expected good things to happen. And you know what? They did. The mirror principle works both ways. If you believe you're not worthy of success, the world will treat you like you're not worthy. If you believe you're always going to struggle, life will give you plenty to struggle with. But if you really believe that you deserve good things, that you have something valuable to offer, that success is your natural state, the world starts reflecting that back to you too. Most people spend their whole lives trying to get others to believe in them, but they've got it backwards. The world doesn't believe in you first, and then you start believing in yourself. You start believing in yourself first, and then the world has no choice but to believe in you too. That's the alchemy, transforming your internal belief into external magnetism. But let me be clear about something. There's a world of difference between arrogance and authentic belief. Arrogance is loud, pushy, needs constant validation. Arrogance says, "Look at me and aren't I great?" Arrogance is actually insecurity wearing a mask. But authentic belief is quiet power. It doesn't need to announce itself because its presence speaks louder than words. Authentic belief lifts other people up instead of putting them down. It's secure enough to celebrate someone else's success because it knows there's enough success to go around. I knew a salesman once who never had to convince anyone to buy anything. People would walk into his store just to talk to him, and somehow they'd leave with exactly what they needed, feeling great about their purchase. His secret wasn't some slick sales technique or manipulative psychology. His secret was that he believed so completely in what he was selling, not just the product, but the value he was bringing to people's lives, that his belief did all the selling. He didn't have to push because his conviction was so strong it pulled people toward him. That's what happens when you develop magnetic presence. You stop having to chase opportunities because opportunities start chasing you. You stop having to convince people because your belief convinces them. You stop having to work so hard at networking because people want to be around your energy. Here's the thing about belief being contagious, and this is crucial to understand. You're always spreading something. Every interaction you have, every room you walk into, every conversation you engage in, you're broadcasting your internal state. If you're filled with doubt and uncertainty, you're spreading that. If you're anxious and worried, that's contagious too. But when you're filled with authentic belief, when you truly know that everything is going to work out because you're committed to making it work out, that spreads like wildfire. I want you to think about the most successful person you know personally. Not some celebrity or business mogul you've read about, but someone in your own life who has achieved something significant. I'll bet if you really think about it, there's something different about their energy. When they walk into a room, the temperature changes. When they speak, people listen. When they commit to something, everyone assumes it's going to happen. That's magnetic presence, and it's not some mystical quality reserved for special people. It's the natural result of unshakable belief expressing itself through a human being. The transformation from ordinary presence to magnetic presence isn't about changing who you are. It's about becoming more of who you already are. It's about letting your natural gifts shine through the static of doubt and uncertainty. It's about showing up as the person you are when you're alone with your biggest dreams, when no one is watching, when you allow yourself to believe that anything is possible. Because here's what I know for certain. When you believe so strongly that it radiates from every pore of your being, the world has no choice but to sit up and take notice. But here's what most people don't understand about belief. It's not a one-time decision. It's a daily discipline. You don't just decide to believe and then coast on that decision for the rest of your life. Belief is like a fire call. It needs fuel every single day or it dies down to smoldering embers. The people who maintain unshakable conviction throughout their lives understand this fundamental truth. Belief is built through daily practices, not grand gestures. Let me share something personal with you. Every morning, before I do anything else, I spend 30 minutes feeding my belief system. Not reading the news, not checking messages, not diving into the day's problems, but deliberately filling my mind with thoughts that strengthen my conviction about what I'm building and where I'm going. I read something that inspires me. I review my goals and remind myself why they matter. I visualize the person I'm becoming and the impact I want to make. Some people might call this motivation, but I call it maintenance. Maintaining the mental state that makes everything else possible. Here's a story that will show you the power of this principle. There was an athlete who dreamed of competing in the Olympics, but came from a small town where nobody had ever made it that far. Every single day for 4 years, he would spend an hour visualizing his race. Not just thinking about it casually, but seeing it, feeling it, experiencing it in his mind with such clarity that when he finally stood at the starting line, it felt like he'd been there 1,000 times before. He didn't just hope to win, he knew he would win because he'd already won in his mind every day for 4 years. And when race day came, his body simply followed the path his mind had already traveled. That's the difference between wishful thinking and belief with substance. Wishful thinking is passive. You hope something good might happen. But belief is active. You're constantly reinforcing your certainty through deliberate mental and physical practices. You're building evidence in your own mind that your success is inevitable. You know what I've learned? Belief without action is just wishful thinking, but action without belief is just busy work. The magic happens when you combine unshakable belief with consistent, purposeful action. Every small action you take in alignment with your belief sends a message to your subconscious mind, this is real. This is happening. I am serious about this. And your subconscious mind, which controls most of your behavior, starts looking for ways to make your belief a reality. There's a feedback loop that most people never tap into. When you act on your belief, even in small ways, you create evidence that your belief is justified. That evidence strengthens your belief, which makes you more likely to take bigger actions, which creates more evidence, which strengthens your belief even more. It's like compound interest, but for conviction. The people who understand this principle don't wait until they feel completely ready to start taking action. They start taking small actions immediately, knowing that the actions will build the readiness they're waiting for. I knew an entrepreneur who wanted to start her own consulting business but was terrified of presenting to corporate executives. So every morning she would stand in front of her bathroom mirror and practice her pitch. Not just once or twice, but until she could deliver it with complete conviction, until she believed every word she was saying, until her voice carried the certainty of someone who knew she could solve their problems. By the time she got in front of her first real client, she'd already delivered that presentation hundreds of times to the most critical audience she knew, herself. Here's something crucial about feeding your belief and starving your doubt. You have to be selective about what you allow into your mind. Your brain is like a garden. Whatever you plant there, whatever you water regularly, that's what's going to grow. If you spend your day consuming negative news, listening to pessimistic people, focusing on everything that could go wrong, you're watering the weeds of doubt. But if you deliberately choose to consume content that strengthens your belief, surround yourself with people who support your vision, focus on possibilities instead of problems, you're cultivating the garden of conviction. Now let me be honest with you. There will be moments when your belief wavers. Moments when the doubt creeps in, when the obstacles seem too big, when the voice in your head whispers, maybe this isn't going to work out. Those moments don't mean you're weak or that you lack real belief. Those moments are normal, and how you handle them determines whether your belief grows stronger or gradually erodes. The people with unstoppable conviction have learned to treat doubt like a temporary visitor, not a permanent resident. When doubt shows up, they acknowledge it without fighting it, then they immediately go back to their belief-building practices. They don't try to argue with the doubt or pretend it's not there. They simply redirect their attention to the evidence that supports their belief and take the next action that moves them forward. There's compound interest in consistent belief-building activities that most people never experience because they're not consistent enough long enough to see it. The first week you practice these disciplines, you might feel a little better about your chances. The first month you might notice you're thinking differently about your goals. But after 6 months of daily belief building, after a year of consistently feeding your conviction, something powerful happens. Your belief becomes so strong, so integrated into who you are, that shaking it becomes nearly impossible. Your peer group either builds your belief system or erodes it. There's no neutral ground here. The people you spend time with are constantly influencing your internal conversation. If you're surrounded by people who complain about how hard everything is, who focus on all the reasons things won't work, who have given up on their own dreams, their energy will gradually wear down your conviction. But if you choose to spend time with people who are building something, who believe in possibilities, who support your vision even when it seems impossible, their energy will strengthen your resolve. I watched a teacher transform a failing school through nothing but unshakable belief in her students. When she arrived, everyone had written these kids off. The test scores were terrible, the discipline problems were constant, the other teachers had given up hope. But this teacher looked at those same children and saw something different. She saw potential. She saw intelligence that had been buried under years of low expectations. And she treated them like the brilliant, capable students she knew they could become. She didn't lower her standards to match their current performance. She raised her expectations and helped them rise to meet them. Within 2 years, that school went from worst in the district to best in the state. Same kids, same buildings, same resources. The only thing that changed was one person's unshakable belief in what was possible. Here's a practice that will transform your belief system. Keep what I call an evidence file. Every time something goes right, every small win, every sign that you're moving in the right direction, write it down. Most people focus so much on what's not working that they miss all the evidence that things are working. But when you deliberately collect proof that your belief is justified, when you review that evidence regularly, you're building an unshakable foundation of conviction. The truth is, building unstoppable conviction isn't about one big breakthrough moment. It's about thousands of small choices made consistently over time to feed your belief instead of your doubt. It's about treating your conviction like the most valuable thing you own, because in many ways, it island everything you achieve in life will be a direct result of the strength of your belief in what's possible. And when you've built that kind of belief, when it runs through your veins like electricity, that's when the magic happens. That's when you reach the level where playing small becomes more uncomfortable than playing big, where staying safe feels riskier than taking bold action, where success stops being something you chase and becomes something that chases you. Let me tell you about the biggest risk I ever took in my career. I was finally making decent money, had some security, could have coasted for the rest of my life doing what I was already doing. But there was this voice inside me, this conviction that I had something bigger to offer the world. Everyone around me thought I was crazy to leave what I had built. Why rock the boat? They asked. Why risk what you've already achieved? But here's what they didn't understand. When your belief becomes strong enough, staying in your comfort zone becomes the riskiest choice you can make. You see, I had reached a point where I believed so completely in what I could become that not pursuing it felt like betraying myself. The risk wasn't in going after my bigger vision. The risk was in playing small when I knew I was capable of so much more. When you have that level of conviction, when you know in your bones that you're meant for something significant, anything less than full commitment to that vision becomes a form of slow death. Here's what most people get backwards about risk. They think playing small is safer than playing big. But the truth is, playing small is actually the riskiest strategy they're island. When you play small, you're risking regret, you're risking mediocrity, you're risking reaching the end of your life and wondering, what if? When you play big, when you bet on yourself completely, the worst thing that can happen is you fail and learn something valuable. But when you play small, the worst thing that can happen is you succeed at something that was never worthy of your potential. When your belief reaches the cellular level, something remarkable happens. The fear of failure disappears, not because failure becomes impossible, but because failure becomes irrelevant. You stop seeing failure as the opposite of success and start seeing it as part of success. Every setback becomes feedback. Every obstacle becomes a puzzle to solve. Every no becomes a stepping stone to the right yes. I watched this transformation happen with an artist I knew. For years, she created beautiful work but kept it hidden away, convinced that nobody would want what she had to offer. She had talent, she had vision, but she lacked the belief that her work mattered. Then something shifted. Maybe it was reading about other artists who had struggled. Maybe it was finally getting tired of hiding her gift from the world, but she developed this unshakable conviction that her art needed to be seen. She didn't just believe in her ability to create, she believed in the importance of her creation. And when that belief became strong enough, her behavior changed completely. She stopped waiting for permission and started showing her work. She stopped apologizing for taking up space and started claiming it boldly. She stopped pricing her art based on her insecurities and started pricing it based on its value. And you know what happened? The galleries that had ignored her before suddenly wanted to represent her. The collectors who had never heard of her started seeking her out. The art world that had seemed so exclusive suddenly opened its doors. Why? Because when you believe so deeply in what you're offering that it radiates from every pore of your being, the world has no choice but to pay attention. That's the magnetism of complete commitment. When you're fully invested in your vision, when you've burned the boats and made success your only option, you emit a frequency that opportunities can't ignore. People can sense when someone is all in, when they're not hedging their bets or keeping one foot out the door. That kind of commitment is rare in this world, and it's irresistible. Here's something most people never realize. When you believe completely in what you're building, your entire energy field changes. Your posture changes. Your voice changes. The way you walk into a room changes. You stop asking for permission and start acting like someone who belongs. You stop explaining yourself and start simply being yourself. You stop trying to convince people and start attracting the right people. I knew a young man who got promoted to manager ahead of people who had been with the company longer, had more experience and better credentials. When I asked his supervisor why they chose him, the answer was revealing. When he talks about the future of this department, you can tell he can see it. Not just intellectually, but he can actually see it. And when someone has that kind of vision, that kind of certainty about where things are going, you want them leading the way. That's what happens when belief transforms into vision. You don't just know what you want to achieve. You can see it so clearly that others start seeing it too. Your certainty becomes their certainty. Your vision becomes their vision. Your belief becomes their belief. That's the responsibility that comes with powerful belief. It doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. With great belief comes great responsibility. When you develop unshakable conviction, people start looking to you for leadership, for direction, for hope. Your belief becomes a lighthouse in their storm. Your certainty becomes their anchor. That's why it's so important to build belief that's authentic, belief that's based on values, belief that lifts others up rather than putting them down. I remember a mentor I had who saw potential in everyone he met. Not fake potential, not wishful thinking, but genuine possibility that others couldn't see in themselves. He had this remarkable gift of believing in people before they believed in themselves. And you know what? People rose to meet his expectations. They became the person he saw in them. Because his belief in them was so strong, it awakened their own belief in themselves. That's how belief becomes legacy. It's not just about what you achieve, it's about what you inspire others to achieve. It's not just about the dreams you make come true, it's about the dreams you help others discover. When you believe so completely in human potential, in the power of persistence, in the inevitability of growth, that belief spreads like ripples in a pond, touching lives in ways you'll never fully know. The ripple effect of one person who believes completely is immeasurable. You might never know how your unwavering conviction inspired someone to start their own business, to go back to school, to pursue their art, to take that risk they'd been afraid to take. You might never know how your example of living boldly gave someone else permission to live boldly too. But I can tell you this, when you commit fully to your vision, when you believe so strongly that the world has no choice but to notice, you become a force for possibility in this world. So here's my challenge to you, and I want you to really think about this. What would you attempt if you knew it was impossible to fail? Not difficult, not challenging, but impossible to fail. What dreams would you pursue if doubt wasn't an option? What risks would you take if you knew they weren't really risks at all, just steps on the inevitable path to your success? Because here's what I've learned after all these years. The difference between people who live extraordinary lives and those who settle for ordinary ones isn't talent, isn't luck, isn't circumstances, it's belief. It's the absolute unshakable conviction that they deserve success, that they have something valuable to offer, that their dreams matter enough to bet their lives on. Remember, success is not a destination, it's a belief system. It's not something you arrive at, it's something you carry with you everywhere you go. It's not something that happens to you, it's something that happens through you. When you believe so strongly that success becomes inevitable, when you act so boldly that mediocrity becomes impossible, when you live so authentically that the world has no choice but to make room for who you really are, that's when you discover that success was never the goal. Success was always the byproduct of becoming the person you were meant to be. The world is waiting for someone who believes completely, someone who's willing to plant trees they may never sit under, someone who's willing to build something bigger than their lifetime, someone who's willing to live so boldly that their very existence becomes an invitation for others to do the same. The world is waiting for someone who believes so strongly that doubt becomes impossible, whose conviction is so contagious that everyone around them starts believing too. Why not you? Why not now? The seed of greatness is already within you. The question is, do you believe strongly enough to let it grow?